Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the second season of the Overanalysts podcast. As always, we're so glad to have you, and allow me, given my absence during our inaugural episode of this season, to say how much I've missed being able to spend these moments with you here on the show. My name is Brady Duncan, aka the Overanalyst on Twitch and associated platforms, and I'm joined as always by my good friends Martina Turlovich or Seph the Overwitch.
I am impressed you managed to pronounce my last name. Hi, everyone.
And Mate Kuchan, or Comrade Potato, on Twitch and associated platforms.
You failed a bit, but I'll forgive you. Hello.
Well, if I failed, what was it supposed to be then?
Kuchan.
Kuchan.
Yeah. So just the intonation was a bit different, but that's it.
More emphasis on the first syllable.
Yeah.
But I didn't totally mispronounce it like those people from elsewhere in the country do, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so firstly, welcome back to a second proper season of the Overanalyst podcast. We hope to have episodes to you guys far more regularly on this platform or any others where you may be finding us. We will, from this point on, if you haven't heard, either in one of our live streams or via other channels through which we're able to communicate to you, we are going to be focusing most of our output for all projects, including this podcast, to our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and just search for the Overanalysts or the Overanalysts podcast, you can find us there, and also obtain a full backlog of this podcast, our creepypasta analysis / riff show, Overanalyzing Creepypasta, and stream VODs from all three of us. So that's going to be your one-stop shop for everything related to the Overanalysts, though we will maintain a presence on some other platforms as well, of course. So, now that we have begun Season 2, we actually would like to embark on something of a special project with you guys over the next 3 weeks. And that project is tied to kind of a vision we had for the broader community. See, we know, or at least I know, it was brought to my attention, quite a lot of the people present here in our audience aren't super present like in our streams and all that, so you may not know us as anything more than loudmouth wannabe video game pundits, which we absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
But something we've tried to do throughout the first season is kind of shine a little bit of a light on, notable games or persons within the industry to let you know, give you a broader picture of what's really going on with certain aspects of the industry, right? What's going on with this game? What's going on with this studio? Who are these people that are making it? And I thought it would be an interesting idea, kind of to start our second season out, by interviewing us, having each one of us interviewed by the other two hosts on special episodes that may vary greatly in length. Some may be a little longer, some may be a little shorter than usual. Because something we've talked about so heavily beyond just adding context to our discussions of gaming and broader nerd culture is how deeply personal people's journeys with media and the ways in which they consume and remember it can be. And so I thought it may do to facilitate this kind of conversation and add some depth to it by sharing our experiences with those very same phenomena and our journeys with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so these interviews are going to be, of course, largely unscripted. I have a few questions jotted down here that I'm just going to use as a template. But the goal is to share more of ourselves with you guys and hopefully show you not just that we appreciate the ways people consume media and that media affects their outlook, affects their mores, affects the ways in which they engage with other facets of their life, but also then to demonstrate how those apply to us. So I hope you'll enjoy this. This first interview is going to be with Martina. And I'm going to be leading the way with this rough template of questions, but Mate, you're welcome to jump in at any time. Anytime
I'm sure I'll have a few jokes.
Okay, great.
Great.
So, Tina, are you ready?
No, but let's go.
Firstly, thank you so much for volunteering to go first. You volunteered as tribute. That's very brave. We're glad to have you here. I'm actually really, really glad we get to start with you because I think our community, right, and a lot of the discussions we tap into kind of dig into the intersections of gaming specifically, but also the broader tech industry on one hand, and then the
Mm-hmm.
broader entertainment industry on the other. And I think your journey, just what I know of it, allows us to examine all three of those things and the places where they intersect really, really deeply. So I'm really happy we get to start here.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that all of our experiences are pretty well matched into this podcast because Mate is also like Mate also has a tech background and you
Mhm.
have educational background. So with
That is
all of
true.
our powers combined, we have this podcast and Captain
As,
Planet.
as I like
We
to
are
say,
smart.
Smart.
with all of our powers combined, we are a single functional adult human being.
Yup.
But I want to start this, as I think a lot of these types of interviews should begin, by just letting you have the floor to introduce yourself to the audience, and just establish yourself in your own words. So, Martina, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. You heard my voice plenty of times, but here I am finally presenting myself as an actual person behind the microphone. So, I'm Martina. I am the Overwitch of this Overanalysts trio. Um, Born in Luxembourg, raised in Croatia, living in Germany, being just generally from all over the place. As we mentioned earlier, I have a tech background. I'm a software engineer, currently working as a consultant in a big company called ThoughtWorks. Um, and in my free time, basically playing a lot of video games, which is one of the reasons why we all gathered here to talk about video games and to enjoy our mutual love for the gaming industry. Other than that, I am 29, living in Germany, as I said, with my two babies, my dog Beppo, a little corgi, and my cat Poppatine, or as we like to call her, Poppy. Yeah, that's just in short about me.
Excellent. Thank you. One moment. My blood glucose monitor is doing its. Sorry, it's been doing this all day. I've told you before where, like, it refuses to accept my calibrations. So it's told me I'm dying for the past 2 hours, which,
Right.
You just aren't listening. What the fuck, Brady?
if I am, it's news to me. Okay, sorry about that. So, Tina, one place I want to kind of begin to unravel this very, like, variegated web of interests you've spun for us, and we'll
Mhm.
get into the others, is like this love of gaming that you say builds community. We're gonna tap into community a bit later on. But really quickly, I wonder if you could just give us like a general rundown of your history with gaming, like when you were first exposed to the hobby, or how it kind of evolved from there throughout your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, as Mate can probably confirm, when we were young in Croatia, gaming really wasn't a thing. It was really hard to get your hands on any console games, or even people that were thinking about that as a hobby, as a viable pastime. So my first encounter with the video game was when I was 3 years old, and I got a visit from my cousins from Luxembourg. They visited us in Croatia, and so I have like two male cousins and one female. And the boys had a brand new Game Boy. I remember it was dark blue colored, and the game they had on it was the Smurfs.
Ooh.
And yeah, and I was just like so fascinated by this little gadget, and I wanted to try it. But they told me, and I still remember it to this day, video games are not for girls.
Oh God.
Yeah, and like they were 3 years old as well, but they were like, "Nah, girls can't play video games." I got so angry, I actually stole their Game Boy, and I was hiding behind the house playing the Smurfs. And of course the boys were crying, and like our parents were searching for me, and I was just like hiding behind the building, playing the Game Boy. I got
For you.
like a lot of spanking from my dad because of that, but that was my first encounter with video games.
First off,
But I think that my dad noticed that I would really enjoy video games. So next time he went to Luxembourg for a business trip, he brought me back my very own Game Boy. It was one of those fat versions of the Game Boys, and it was a transparent one, so you could see all the like the chips and the
like
motherboard and everything.
the
Yeah,
original
yeah,
Game Boy.
exactly. And he brought back also 3 games. You could tell that all of those were like secondhand because the Game Boy was very, badly beaten up, and the cartridges also had like the sticker a bit peeled off. And the 3 games that he brought were the original Tetris, Castlevania, The Adventure of Castlevania, and the third one was some sort of racing game. I forgot which one it was, but yeah, just like a, I don't know, average racing game. And I remember that those were the only games that I had access to for a long time, for like the next 5 years, I would say. And I would be playing them almost every day. I knew every nook and cranny of the Castlevania game, up until the point that to this day I know exactly like what my finger movements were, and I knew every secret, and that was like way before internet and walkthroughs and things like that. So yeah, that's why Castlevania is one of my all-time favorite series. It was basically what brought me into gaming.
And it's really impressive that you were able to start there, because as far as I'm aware, real quick, my audio level is okay. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
super quiet.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Thank you. As far as I'm aware, Castlevania Adventure is generally considered one of the hardest, most obtuse games to control in the entire franchise. So for you to start there and love it, like dedicate yourself to that grind to learn the game inside and out, is really impressive.
It was really good, and I still have the music of it in my head. I remember that I would know exactly, like, it wasn't randomly generated, right? So after a while of playing it, you exactly know from which pixel the enemy was gonna come and how you have to react to it. So I would basically start firing in the direction before the enemy would even spawn. So I was like, yeah, it was basically the only game that I've played for like 4 or 5 years. So obviously I knew every nook and cranny of it.
So a couple things about that story stick out to me. Firstly, um, good on you for saving your cousins from playing the Smurfs. Most children would cry because they had to play the Smurfs.
What do you mean, Brady? That was the first game I got for the PlayStation 1, the Smurfs and Worms Armageddon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you poor child.
That copy of Worms Armageddon just collected dust on the shelf while you wore the Smurfs out.
Well, the Worms were kind of more like when you got friends over, because you could, play with one controller with like up to like, I don't know, 4 or 5 people. And the Smurfs, I don't remember that well, but I think I beat the whole game.
Okay.
I didn't go like, I hate this.
Mm.
I mean, it was the first game I played, though. I didn't come back to it ever because there were much better ones. But it's not like oh god, that was the worst.
No,
thing
I
ever.
got you. But Tina, the elements I want to seriously follow up on from that little story are, firstly, again, just as an aside, I want to say how admirable it was, because I assume, right, based on what you told me, your dad personally, but also like his generation more generally in Croatia, would not understand the appeal of video games whatsoever and would kind of disapprove of them, right?
Exactly. And I think up to this day, like the older generations, and I'm talking like people in like mid-50s plus, they still don't get it. But they don't even get software engineering, right? I'm still trying to explain to my family, like from my dad on, that software engineering is an actual job, that I don't actually sit at my computer and type into the notepad 8 hours a day and get paid a lot of money. So,
But
yeah.
I mean, they don't generally get smartphones either.
Yeah.
I think it's really admirable then, and actually really sweet, that he went out of his way to get that Game Boy for you then, when it was something he didn't understand and he didn't like all that much.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that is the kind of model of good faith action and love for others that I wish more people would follow across demographic boundaries, right? Like, I don't get this, I don't have to get this, I just want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be
Yeah.
well cared for.
I
That's
mean,
really admirable.
yeah, so he got me the Game Boy, but I still, of course, was hearing all about how video games are gonna make your brain rot and things like that. So he was still very much against it, but he was the one that bought it for me, so...
Almost like the action spoke louder than the words, right?
Kind
like,
of,
oh,
yeah.
this is what I'm supposed to say,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm glad you're happy.
Yeah, but like
To that end-
nowadays... sorry, continue.
No.
Go
right ahead. This
I
is
was gonna say that
your
nowadays, when I tell him, oh yeah, I'm doing live streaming and I'm playing and talking about video games, and sometimes I even get money for it, he seems to be like genuinely impressed. Like because as we said earlier, like that generation just doesn't understand technology very much, so he literally thinks I'm playing games for a living, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. Now you mentioned this before, and it's something I'm familiar with because we've talked about it like on stream pretty often. But like, just to be clear for our audience, um, like tech related hobbies, but like gaming in particular, was not very popular in Croatia at all until around your generation, right? And even then, it's still more of a niche hobby there than it would be elsewhere, like
Yeah,
in
I
Europe
would
and
say...
the US, right?
Yeah, I would say like our generation was like the one that started dabbling in it,
Mm-hmm.
but still, for example, my classmates in elementary school or high school did not understand it and were not gamers. When I came into college, then it became a little bit more of, or at least maybe I was just finding more people who had similar hobbies to mine.
Right. But it wasn't something you noticed was common at all amongst the older generations.
Oh, definitely not. Like my also my city is like the biggest city on the peninsula. That doesn't really say much. It's like 50,000
Mm-hmm.
citizens. But we did have some stores that would be selling multimedia things. But generally you couldn't really find video games, or maybe you could find like one or two popular ones. Like usually they would have World of Warcraft,
Right.
like to sell the subscription, but
Like
when
PC
it comes
games.
to gaming itself, like not really.
See, that's kind of different than my experience. Uh, like in the beginning, like PS1 era,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there was three game stores in my town. One which pretty quickly closed because there wasn't really like enough traffic for three
Yeah.
of them, and two of them then left for a long time, and then there was just one left around like the PS2 to 3,
Mm-hmm.
when more people discovered they can just get broadband internet and torrent the games,
Yeah,
because these stores weren't really like living off of selling original games. They were selling
definitely.
pirated games,
Yeah.
and
Pirated
everybody was...
games, and like I assume some rarer physical editions at a really hefty markup, right? That kind of thing.
No, mostly just pirated games, and they also had like playrooms where they would have like 10 PlayStations, and you could pay like $2 to play for half an hour or something like that.
I see.
Mm.
I see.
But like 90% of their profit was pirated video games, and everybody was buying from them. Like even cops were, so they were safe. Like that was the safest thing ever.
It's where the
But
cops went to pirate their video games.
yeah. But the thing is, like, imagine this: at the cost of one empty CD. So that's like, what, a couple of cents,
Yeah.
in dollar terms. And they were selling PS1 games for like $4, and
Wow.
PS2 ones, and those extra large like double layer discs or whatever they
Oof,
were called,
double layer.
for like 80 kunas. That's like $15 ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then kind
I
of died
love
down.
this. No wonder the other two went out of business.
All three
Yeah.
of them were doing it.
Mm.
It was just pretty common. Like, I don't know what it was like in your town, Seph.
Yeah, like we had one place where we could play video games, and that was the arcade. And that was in the neighborhood that was only for tourists. So, Mate, you probably know Verudela. That's
Yeah.
the part of the city that doesn't live in winter. It doesn't have anyone living there. It's just tourist apartments. So, yeah.
So to that end, I have to ask, because I am curious, was there among older generations any interest at all then in maybe some slightly older hobbies we would associate with like general nerdery, right? So like building models or
Tabletop
or
gaming.
advanced board games. Any of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. It was mostly tabletop gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mostly tabletop gaming. As far as I've noticed, like model building and things like that were also not that popular. And general nerdery, like if we consider like watching movies, like some kind of like niche movies, not
Okay.
really things that you would see in the cinema. Generally, that type of thing. Yeah.
All right. So this was something that you really kind of discovered like through family as you said, but you really had to grow into on your
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
Um so I'm curious then because you are a software engineer as you said. How did you develop this interest in tech then like more broadly?
Well, that's also a very weird story. When I was in high school, I went to like a mathematical, like math-oriented high school. So we had a little bit stronger math, sciences, and IT, but a little bit weaker. What are they called? Just like general things like
Art
creation.
and social sciences, that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah, exactly.
The less important stuff.
The less important stuff, yeah. And I went there because it was generally the hardest high school that you can get into in my city. And I was like, you know what? Let's just aim for the hardest one. Like, why not? So
Mhm.
I got into that one, and I've noticed that I was very, very good at languages. So I could
Okay.
easily pick up the languages. I was actually really good in Latin, which useless thing, but whatever. And my
Beautiful
dad told
language.
me, like when I was trying to pick colleges, he was like, "Oh, you're very good in languages, so you should probably aim for something like either translator or maybe something in tourism." And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was thinking maybe something more related to math. And he was like, what? But you suck at math and you suck with computers. Like, you can't be, an engineer. Like, that's not a job for you. And I was like, watch me. And like, literally all the schools I applied to were engineering or like programming, electric engineering, robotics, maths, physics, things like that. I managed to get into all of them.
Wow.
And after that, it was just like, you know what? Let's see what is the path that is going to, of course, make me the most money, but also that is going to like prove my family that they were absolutely wrong. So I went into programming, and coincidentally, like when I started programming, I actually fell in love with it. So it was a very lucky coincidence.
Okay, so but up to that point, it was motivated. Really, it sounds like by a desire to, of course, like secure a healthy and consistent
Hmm.
living for yourself. That's normal, but
Yeah,
also like this determination to challenge yourself and to
yeah,
overcome the challenges other people put in your way. But it sounds like all along you liked like math and the kinds of fields that serve as prereqs for
hmm,
engineering very
yeah,
consistently, but they were never at the top of your list.
yeah, exactly. Like the thing is, I liked math, for example, but I was never on at the top of my class in math, or like physics as well. But I consistently sucked at physics.
Hmm.
So it was weird that I was actually liking those subjects that I was not good at.
But they were also things at the time, I assume, that just given like the time frame you would have been going through secondary school in, things that I assume the education system were really pushing for. Like we want lots of kids in the STEM fields. Like we're
Yeah,
really going
of
to push for
course.
that.
Yeah. It was always like quite popular, all of those talks about, yeah, let's get more girls into STEM and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, also that, but the thing was, it was really funny. So you would have all of those, not companies, but like organizations that kept pushing for STEM and kept pushing the idea of getting more girls into STEM fields. But then everyone from STEM fields would be so antagonistic towards girls trying to get into STEM fields.
Yep.
Right. Like I heard so many times, like, oh, you just wanted to get into engineering so you would find yourself an engineer husband or things like that. um, and I've heard those things quite often. And to be honest, it was bothering me until I was in college, and then I realized quite a lot of female classmates were actually there for that reason. So I was like, okay, maybe that like stereotypical thinking actually has some
Like
reason.
maybe everybody here is an asshole.
Yeah, basically something like that. I mean, in my year, we were 130 that got our diploma in software
In your
engineering.
cohort.
Out of 130, we were 15 girls.
Oh.
And I knew every single girl out of those 15. I mean, including me, of course. I know only 2 of them that were there genuinely for the love of what they were doing, or for trying, to get into a field that's gonna make them money. Everyone else was there to actually, try to find a husband or find a very good paying job with no effort. So a lot of
Wait,
them, yeah.
2 other than you, or 2 counting you?
No, 2 other than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
20%.
So
That's much better.
yeah, and the other girls were mostly there because they wanted to get, an opportunity in a company that's gonna give them a lot of money, but not like they don't have to make any effort.
So like kind of again that utilitarian calculus, but the other thing about finding partners, I'm curious, was this something that was like encouraged by like communities and families
I
to a
think
certain
quite a lot
extent?
of it was also encouraged by pure desperation, because as you know, Croatia is not really the most rich
Mm-hmm.
country. So like from a yearly age, you kind of have that thought in your head of you need to find a way to make money when you're an adult, and you need
Kind
to
of like
find a
make
way
it
to
out.
survive.
Like you got to find a way to make it out of the community. You got to
Yeah,
find a way
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
reach somewhere else. And I would assume, right, like mom and dad and grandma and grandpa would kind of be encouraging you in that, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, you've got to make it.
yeah. So I
Come hell or
mean,
high water, you've got to make it.
yeah. So like that's what my family kept telling me. Like you have to make it, no matter how. Like it doesn't matter how you do it. I mean, as long as it's legal, of course. But you have to make it.
Sure. As
Shut
long
up.
as it's legal.
Shut up, potato. So yeah, thankfully my family was very much, realistic, and they were not,
Mhm.
pushing me towards, I don't know, finding a rich husband or something. So they were like genuinely cheering for me to make something out of myself.
So this is a really inspiring and I think distinctive theme throughout your story, right? And I think it's going to persist as we run down some of these other topics I have written down.
Hmm.
Is there is an incredible amount of determination present in like your narrative, Tina. Like you fought to get to gaming, something that many people use, right, as an escapist kind of outlet or something to relax with or
Hmm.
decline into. No, you fought for that. And then you also fought to get into a field that is itself very demanding. And I know for a
Yeah.
fact you've never shied away from challenge as long as it's engaging, as long as it's not boring.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't mind things being difficult as long as they're entertaining.
So
So yeah.
that segues perfectly back into gaming related topics.
Yep.
Um, because I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry, this is totally out of order, but I'm just running down my list. Now that we know kind of what led you to your professional and into your kind of hobbyist pursuits, let's dig a little deeper into gaming so we can then circle back around to the
Hmm.
others later once we have a deeper picture of this. Um, would you mind sharing with us just like some of your favorite titles, developers, publishers, even if you have favorites there, or pieces of gaming hardware that you've interacted with over the years?
Right.
Like, just go
So
hog wild.
yeah, unfortunately, when I was growing up, I wasn't really a Nintendo kid because I only
Hmm.
had a Game Boy, but after that, any sort of Nintendo device was a little bit too expensive and very much out of my reach.
Gotcha.
So, what I focused more was computer,
Hmm.
PC gaming in general. And it was, of course, much easier to pirate PC games than it was to pirate any other console games. So one of the first games that I really fell in love with was Neverwinter Nights.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite titles when I was in elementary school. It was very hard though, because I didn't speak a word of English, and it was like it's a role playing game. You have a lot of text you have to read. So I had no idea what was happening, but I enjoyed that game so much. And then I replayed it, of course, a little bit later when I knew English. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what was happening before. Now I know, and I still love it. So
And it was still pretty hard, right?
It was still pretty hard, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next one that I would like to mention is definitely Borderlands 2. It was my first encounter with the shooters, and just the amount of chaos and the amount of very morbid humor was so fascinating to me. I was like, okay, how can a video game say and do things like that and get away with it? Because like some of the things you see in that game is like purely outrageous, but it's there and people love it.
Very vulgar.
Yeah. And I loved it. I genuinely loved it. Then Hollow Knight, one of the, like, of course, newer titles, but one that I was absolutely in love with. Just everything from the music design, just the characters in the game, the story, gameplay. Like, I don't think there is a single thing I don't like in that game.
Fair.
Except Path of Pain. Path of Pain can just fuck right off.
Thank God it's totally optional.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a very fun experience. And one game that I think I've replayed the most out of any game ever, it's Witcher 3. I have, I think, over 500 hours now in Witcher 3. I bought it, I pre-ordered it, and I actually pre-ordered the collector's edition. So I played that one to completion. Then I bought the season pass to get the DLCs. So I finished those. Then for some reason, CDPR decided to gift everyone the Game of the Year edition, that for people that got the collector's edition. So and still on GOG. So I just have 2 Witchers now on GOG. So I played that one from start to finish completely. Then I got it on the Switch, and I also played it there from start to finish. Then I was like, you know what? I never 100% completed it. Like, there was always some bandit camps that I had to clear out or whatever that was left over. So I was like, okay, let's do it once more, and clean everything. And one of the camps bugged out. There was a harpy that spawned underground. And no matter how far back I went with my saves, I could not make that fucking harpy be above ground. So I decided to make an entire playthrough from start just to get that last camp, and I did. So yeah,
well done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think those are mostly like the games that are worth mentioning. There's still a bunch of games that I like, especially indies, roguelikes in general. I'm a big fan of roguelikes. But yeah, I don't think any of them had such a big impact on me as these ones that I've mentioned.
Okay. Any developers that like really impacted you?
If you asked me this a year ago, I would say CDPR. But we know how that ended, so no. If you asked me 5 years ago, I would say Blizzard, but we know how that ended up. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would say Gearbox, but we know how that ended up. So I'm just gonna say Team Cherry for now, but I'm kind of afraid to look into what they're up to, because I'm afraid they're gonna disappoint me. Like, I don't have the strength in me.
They seem like sweethearts.
I don't know if I spaced out or you didn't say. I would have said CDPR like 2 years ago, but we know how that turned out.
That was the first thing I said.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
You spaced out.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to that. Don't worry, because I do want to pick your brain about recent happenings in the industry that have discontented all of us, and we'll probably make a special like middle finger episode about. But something did occur to me about all of the titles you listed. So, all great choices, by the way.
Yeah.
I've yet to play through all of Neverwinter Nights. It's very, very hard, but I have played through and completed all of the others. So we share a lot of tastes, as will become evident over the course of this series. I think all of us have fairly similar tastes in games. But with the exception of Neverwinter Nights, which was I want to say late 90s title, all of the titles you listed were relatively recent. I mean, Borderlands 2 does have some age on it, but you started playing in the early 90s, right? Early to mid 90s?
Yeah.
And it seems like all of the titles that really left an impact on you were released substantially later. So was there a period in your life where, even though gaming was present, it wasn't nearly as big of a passion for you as it is now? Or was it the case that a lot of the games you played when you were younger, you played just because they were there and you didn't really enjoy as much as the ones you had access to when you were older and could like curate your own collection?
Yeah, that was exactly it. So for quite a long time, I would say most of my elementary school, so that would be like 8 years, I didn't really have that much access to video games, and I didn't have internet. So the only thing that I could play were the things that were available, which was, my old Game Boy with Castlevania on it. I actually got a cracked PlayStation 1 when I was in my second year of elementary school. And on it, I had just one game, and that was Spyro 2. So
Journey to Glimmer.
Yeah. Gateway to Glimmer or Ripto's Rage, depending on the area. But yeah, that was another game that I knew every nook and cranny of, and I really loved. The thing was that it feels like for quite a long time, the only games that I could find or like try to play were the games that were very old. So like in the early 2000s, the only games that I could play were the ones from early 90s. And then suddenly I went into college and I was introduced to Steam library, and I started working, so I was able to afford current games. So yeah, the entire perspective changed. But for quite a long time, it was just like, I could only get my hands on these very old games because they were either free or I would get it from somebody's old CD or something like that. Like I got on one CD just the Visual Boy Advance, like the Game Boy Advance as emulator with Pokemon Ruby, and I played that for years.
And you are joining us after a pretty sudden jump cut. Sorry about that. We had some technical issues, but we are now ready to continue with Martina's interview here on the Overanalysts podcast, the only podcast with more problems than our individual lives. Are we ready to carry on?
Yeah.
So, Martina, you were saying earlier, like, you don't really have any big fans, or you're not a big fan of any like major developers right now, but maybe just keep an eye on indie studios more generally.
Yeah, just generally I'm more impressed lately with indie studios and indie titles than I am with AAA studios. Honestly, every time I wait for a AAA game, I just get disappointed. I don't know if I just have high standards or they have been becoming more shit each year.
I think something that's important to consider, and I'm not going to walk over your responses here, but like, because it's probably going to factor into each of our three stories, is the standards of quality for AAA games. And I have to stress AAA Western games, because Japanese AAA devs generally seem to hold themselves to a slightly higher standard, with some exceptions. Konami.
You mean Komani?
Like, Western AAA devs' overall quality has been declining as the models that publishers impose become more and more exploitative financially. The quality of and accessibility of indies has been increasing, and our own standards as we age have probably gotten a little steeper than they were like when we were teenagers, you know? So that's going to account for some of those shifts. But now that we've spoken a bit about games that impacted you, devs maybe that impacted you, I would be interested to know, like, what's your optimal design philosophy for a video game. Like, this is where you can just go crazy and explain all of the types of features, all of the aesthetics, all of the steps and all of the perspectives you would like to see incorporated into video games. Like, give us your ideal right here.
So this may sound really weird, but I am very much into pixel art.
Okay.
Generally pixel art games, especially when it has very high quality sprites, because I find that I don't know, like proper pixel art is a bit harder to make than just 3D models, which are basically just lately they are just how are they called,
Photorealistic.
Photorealistic, yeah. While pixel art has more art behind it, if that makes any sense. So generally I would go for a pixel art game with roguelike elements.
Okay.
I am the type of person that gets bored very fast, like very, very, very fast. So I would definitely go for something like a roguelike. With maybe Dark Souls type of mechanic. So, the punishing death,
Okay.
learning from your mistakes, long dungeons, so to speak, or long levels with a very rewarding boss fight at the end.
Okay.
What else? Generally, what I don't like is games that have like linear main story with a bajillion of side quests, because I tend to go into the side quests and then I just don't care about the main story. Skyrim.
So like the Western open world model.
Yeah, and this may also sound very counterintuitive, but I don't like that many choices in video games. Especially, I don't like the games that are giving you a lot of choices, like so many choices that it's overwhelming. Like I don't know, but I feel like nowadays it seems that the companies are competing who is gonna make the bigger open world, with like quests that make more impact, like the choices that make more impact and things like that. And sometimes you just don't need it. You can just have a simple story. You can just have a few basic choices if you're into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the words I took down are like pixel art that's like vivid and creative, that's stylized, right? A game that's deep, a game that's iterative, a game that embraces linearity in a way that's not restrictive but liberating, right?
Yeah, like one game that comes into my mind, if you have played it, Moonlighter.
Yes.
It's pixel art. It's roguelike. It has a very simple and linear main story, but it has so much replayability with the entire mechanic of you having a shop where you sell your stuff that you got from your dungeon crawling, that it just pulls you back and you can keep playing it indefinitely if you want.
It's a great loop. And I will say it's a difficult but a very lovingly crafted game.
Ooh, Loop Hero.
Oh, not again.
You said loop, the magic word.
We will table this for now. But I do appreciate that insight because one thing that stands out to me, then this is going to deviate from like the purpose of an introductory presentation of you to the audience, but just something you can see by looking at our YouTube channel is there's a really sharp divergence then, Seph, in the types of games you seem to want to play for pleasure, and those, even though you still enjoy, you play for the stream. Have you noticed that, or am I off the mark?
Oh no, definitely. Mostly because the games that I play for the stream are definitely the games I enjoy as well. It's just sometimes I lose motivation in them. And I feel that just having myself held accountable by playing it on stream helps me get through these games.
I see. That's fascinating and really smart. I had to do that with more things I dislike, or am feel burdened by.
I mean, you did it with Immortal Unchained.
Yeah.
Immortal Unchained, we'll talk about that probably in 2 weeks or so whenever I am being interviewed. But it's a different phenomenon. good segue though, because Tina, my next question for you is: we've talked about all your positives regarding gaming, things you like, hardware you like, companies or like types of companies you like, types of design you like. Now give me your least favorites. What are some of the worst games you've played? What's some of the worst hardware you've used? Just take the
Oh
floor.
god. Yeah. Let me think. For the worst hardware, I don't really have any because it's like either I find them really good or I find them okay, not,
Yeah.
not something for me, but I wouldn't say, I hate it. Like I don't understand the what was it called? Oya?
Ouya. Yeah.
Ouya? Yeah, that thing is just like why? Then the Google Stadia stuff, it's like I wouldn't say I hate it, but I just don't understand it.
Like it's an interesting concept, but like what's the
Yeah.
actual product for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to have my Oculus Quest for a while, and even though I really enjoy virtual reality and I think it's very fascinating, I didn't really enjoy gaming in virtual reality.
Right. Right,
I mean,
because
some things are really nice, like Beat Saber, but some things on VR is not something I would play.
a lot of those titles just don't feel developed enough. Maybe they feel like tech demos because they kind of are.
They always feel like tech demos, yeah.
And I think until they figure out a like seamless way to integrate actual movement, like from place to place, in a VR setting, like a way to emulate that, right?
I mean, they have that. It's just super expensive right now. Like,
Right.
no one's gonna dish out like $2,000 or $3,000 after paying $1,000 for the headset with the
Yeah.
controllers. You have though they're just really big and clunky right now and expensive mostly. And otherwise, like you said, movement right now, if it's too fast, if it's not one of those, it throws you forward or wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
It can cause a lot of
motion
sickness. Yeah,
yes, it can.
Like I've experienced a lot of it, even though I'm not really
Yeah.
prone to motion sickness.
Point is,
like the best game. I was gonna say the best game that I've played in VR that is trying to combat the whole motion sickness issue was Half-Life Alyx, that gives you 3 different styles of movement, so you can choose the one that like causes you the least amount of problems.
Yeah, but kind of like doing the one where you teleport forward or to the side, it breaks immersion a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like jumping from a photo to a photo, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You seem to have more, and well, this isn't actually all that surprising. It makes perfect sense. You reserve sharper criticism, it seems, for the tech and the hardware than for the games themselves, which is what I would expect.
I mean, yeah, because the thing is that like games themselves are kind of they are confined into what a console can do, right? What the tech can do. So yeah, you can have the most realistic made game ever, and that can be a really nice experience. But if the hardware is shit, you're not gonna enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So
see the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, exactly. So Virtual Boy as an idea was amazing. It's just that the hardware was shit. So
and on the back of that, then Martina, I'm interested to know, would you say that your professional life, your experiences, and your interest in software and in tech has given you a different or a deeper perspective on gaming and some of the other media you consume? And if so, how did that kind of affect your
Oh, definitely. Just the fact that I know how software is being made, and I know how much effort it goes even to like the simplest website being made or like the simplest app being made, makes me have a whole lot of appreciation for the devs. So like when I hear how, for example, the devs of Cyberpunk were receiving death threats because the game was clunky, things like that, really anger me because I know that it's genuinely not the developer's fault.
Not at all.
Just like being part of your usual software development process makes you have a whole different perspective on the gaming industry as well. More appreciation, I would say.
More appreciation for the work that goes into it, and also maybe then some of the constraints that come along with these types of projects.
The thing is that as a software engineer, you kind of can get away with some things. Like You don't need to necessarily think about, I don't know, people be getting addicted to your game, because there are of course quite a lot of video games nowadays that are trying to cater to the audience that have those
Gambling
addicting
addictions.
personality. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that as well. And also, as a regular software engineer, you don't really have to think about styling, you don't have to think about art, you don't have to think about audio, while the game devs kind of have to have all of that in mind, like not necessarily
Right.
be proficient in it, but at least need to know about it. And that makes me feel like have a lot more appreciation for them.
Sure.
And also, especially since I know that game devs are the least paid software engineers, yeah, I'm just like fascinated how many game devs out there are that don't really care about money,
Yeah.
but are basically making video games because of their love for video games,
Because
because
of their
there is
passion.
not really money in that.
And I think that's something that's really important for all of us to remember, because the internet and new media in general tend towards really harsh critical perspectives that oftentimes just skew towards outright toxicity, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the art of making video games, the art of making consumable art in this case that you can play with,
Mm-hmm.
is more akin, usually, like the people in the trenches, I mean the actual devs, what their work looks like, and the reason so many of these people do this work
Yeah.
is the same reason why, like in old children's or fairy tales or films, the kindly old toy maker whittled dolls for like the neighborhood children, because they love the craft, they love the
Yeah.
product, and of course they want a safe, happy, healthy environment and productive environment in which to create it, but they love putting that work out into the world and seeing it bring people joy. These
Mm-hmm.
video games are just very, very complex toys, and a toy is only as valuable as the love and care put into it and the enjoyment people derive from it. So
Yeah.
but I appreciate that your work has given you maybe a greater sense of sympathy for people who work in this industry and all of the multiplicitous challenges they face. And to that end, I would like to mention your own work that you mentioned. As a software developer, you or an engineer, you are involved with a corporation that is
Yeah.
very extensively involved in social justice efforts around the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, of course, you can share as much or as little as you would like, but would you mind telling us a little bit about that, and specifically your own personal stances on and like activism regarding to social change?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So one of the things, as I mentioned, that my company is very proud of is our work in social justice projects. So whenever we are not directly involved with a client, we are working on this so-called beach, where we are making pro bono software for any sort of social justice related project. So, for example, we made some software that is helping like doctors keep track of their medication, or for people in India to take into account the number of vaccinated people in their villages and how to reach the nearest doctor and things like that. And all of that is pro bono work. We are also very strong when it comes to promoting uh, inclusion in workplace and diversity. So we are making quite a lot of effort into enabling people from different races, nationalities, sexualities, gender fluid people, like everyone, to be very open about who they are. And we are trying to also explain to like old-fashioned, more conservative companies about the change in the world and how they need to get on with the times. And
So
um,
encouraging them to be kinder to or more open to diverse
yeah,
employees.
exactly. Yeah, and also we are very much encouraging all of our employees to be active in social justice. So quite a lot of us have some side projects on our own that we like to support. I have two things that I'm very much involved with. First is, of course, the representation of minorities and different sexualities and genders in video games. I specifically had a talk about representation of women in video games, and also about representation of mental health issues in video games, which is, I think, like two topics that it can be quite useful for people even outside of video game industry to take a look at. And also the second thing that I'm very much involved with is, of course, animal rescue, animal rights, etc. So I am quite involved with volunteering and rescuing animals, abandoned animals. I am quite active in like donating to shelters that need help with rescuing animals, especially in those countries where euthanasia is still a very big thing. Like specifically, Eastern Balkan, or Eastern Europe in general, Turkey, yeah, places like that. For example, one fun fact today: Norway forbade breeding of, I think it was Cocker Spaniel, Cocker Spaniel, and a certain type of bulldogs, because people were forcefully breeding them, which was causing them a lot of genetic problems. Like the bulldogs were not able to breathe properly because of their, nose deformations, and Cocker Spaniels were having a lot of issues with seizures because they were bred to have a flat head, like the smallest forehead possible. So yeah, Norway today forbade that.
And so they stepped in to control breeding actually to advance the welfare of the dogs.
Exactly. That is also like a thing, for example, with, pugs. Pugs are usually bred to be as derpy and small and like breeding. Yeah, exactly. But like a proper pug actually has a big snout, but you don't see those anymore because people try to breed them to make them have a flat snout, which causes them to have a lot of breathing problems. And usually a lot of them don't survive for a very long time.
We genetically engineered them into miserable little mascots for some reason.
Basically, yeah.
When
yeah.
The standard pug looks perfectly cute as it is.
Yeah. He's still derpy. He just has a bigger nose.
So, something I want to touch on that you mentioned. Well, first off, to let people know, both of those wonderful seminar talks you delivered, both on the representation of women and minorities in video games and in the depiction, the ever-evolving, nuanced depiction of mental health in video games, I believe both spawned out of episodes of this podcast that aired during our first season. So anybody interested, you can find the source material for those talks in our season 1 playlist, where Tina took the lead and delivered some really hard-hitting investigative journalism into like the state of these things in the industry, and gave us like some really phenomenal crash courses. I highly recommend you check those out. I would consider them essential viewing for like the Overanalysts network.
It's like the material that I'm very proud of. Like, yeah, of course it's all fun and video games, but there are some topics that sometimes are more important,
more personal, more higher stakes usually. Because when we're talking about the incredible work that you and your company do, directly champions the welfare of millions of people around the world, trying to create places where people are not just more broadly accepted, but where they are then supported both semantically and empirically, like materially. Where they are happy, where they are healthy, where they are part of a broader community instead of removed from it. And
exactly,
working to challenge negative depictions of the same in mass media that so many people consume. I should say thoughtless negative depiction, right? I shouldn't say like, oh, you could never have a villain who is this. But you genuinely should never allow somebody in fiction to be a villain because they are something.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something we'll see a lot in bad creepypasta later this season. I think that's so fascinating and so admirable. And speaking of community, I think, is one of the areas of engagement where I've seen you personally do the most incredible work. You are an advocate to a level I've hardly seen of using the internet, new media, and new media related to gaming specifically, like Discord, Twitch, all of that, for connection, for positivity, for community and friendship and growth on a level I've, again, hardly ever seen. Could you tell me a little bit more about that and like your philosophy on sharing hobbies or yourself with the world through Twitch, through Discord, and all that, and how you've worked to build your own community and what you hope people get out of that or what you hope to do with it?
Yeah, definitely. So the reason why I started, well, firstly Twitch, that's how I started this entire like community building thing, was because I moved to Germany, and I moved alone, without family, without friends, and I was, a new person in a new city, in a new country where I didn't speak the language. So I felt like crippling loneliness hitting me from day one, basically. And one of the better things that I could think of was to somehow share my hobbies with the people that I've left behind in Croatia. So, of course, you can play some games with some people, but sometimes you just want to play a single player, right? You don't really want to keep playing the same co op game over and over again because sometimes it just gets old.
Of course.
So I was like, okay, how can I share this with my friends, and how can I still keep communicating with them while I'm doing something that I enjoy? So I started my Twitch channel, and I started receiving quite positive feedback from my friends. Of course, that was now 6 years ago, so a very long time. From that moment on, I had a lot of like ups and downs, and first I was on Twitch, then I went on Mixer, then Mixer fell apart, then I came back on Twitch, and it was a long journey. But during that time, I always knew that I feel like I want to keep talking about video games, and I wanted to keep sharing my passion, which was gaming industry in general. So what was the way to get people involved in that? And of course I could have joined, I don't know, a gaming magazine or something, but I always felt that was more of a one-way communication, right? I didn't want to talk at people, I wanted to talk with people.
Very good.
So yeah, I opened up my Discord and started gathering people little by little. Quite a lot of people came for for different things. Some were my friends, some were joining because they wanted to talk to me about that one specific game, but stayed because they had fun. Some of them came just for trolling, but then ended up being actually pretty good members of the community.
You converted.
Said I was sorry.
And then you have Potato.
He's always been there.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I found him there when I moved into the Discord server, and he's been there since, and I just can't get rid of him. It's like, mold that you have in your bathroom, and it's just there.
I was just in the corner screaming and throwing poop at everyone.
At some point, yeah, he started speaking English, so I was like, yeah. At some point, the mold started talking back at me. I don't know, maybe I was hallucinating, maybe it was Potato.
From the mold.
Yeah, mold turned into Potato. But yeah, and then as time progressed, I was like, okay, now maybe it's time to expand my horizons a little bit. So Potato was always there as like part of my community when I started. We went to college together, so we knew each other from there, but then stayed in touch because we're both idiots.
Wow.
Yeah, some friendships survive because people involved are idiots. But yeah, like at some point, Exodust, which is also a very valuable member of our community, was like, hey, I know this streamer that is genuinely doing a very, very nice playthroughs of like Souls-like games, and I think he would really enjoy it. Because at that point, he was just trying to get me into Souls-like, and I was like, it's not my thing. Like, and then I tried it, and I was like, you know what, that could be my thing. I actually enjoy this. So he introduced me to you. He was like, yeah, go, like check out this guy. And I think the first stream that I saw was you cursing at some boss in Bloodborne, and I was like, yep. And I was like, yep, I want this guy in my community. So I started, coming back over and over again, talking with people in chat and just like generally interacting. And then the entire idea of, hey, let's make us a community, let's
Indeed.
just gather all of us together. And at that point, the pandemic started and we all wanted some
community.
human interaction.
We wanted community. We wanted
So yeah,
camaraderie, like
yeah,
fellowship.
yeah. And like we all have different like interests when it comes to games, but we can all agree on certain things. Like generally we can appreciate good design.
Yeah.
We can trash bad design, and we have quite similar opinions about games. Like for example, some games that you play, I can say like, yeah, this genuinely seems like an awesome game. Like it's not something that I would play, but I can see that it's a quality game. So I think, yeah, it's helped me also stay sane in the last couple of years. Just having someone to bounce my ideas off of, and also like you two are the people that I can come up with, come to with like a crazy idea about, hey, let's do this, and you guys are gonna be like, yeah, let's try it. So it's like just a very positive community in general.
Absolutely.
Like yeah, like at some point I'm like, hey, let's maybe do a movie night because I feel like watching a movie, and then we do a movie night. Or we even started doing D&D with Mate being our game master. It's like, just why not, let's try everything.
On drugs though, kids, don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Don't try everything.
Or you can try drugs, just don't steal mine. Next question.
I think a bit late to plead the fifth. But I think something really important you hit on there is the distinction in creating community through indirect platforms, like where people aren't physically gathered together. By talking with people as opposed to talking at people.
Yeah.
And I think something that you've always been very, very good at, both in your professional and in your personal life, like here on the internet and also at work, is creating an atmosphere where people, regardless of how long they've been a viewer, how long they've been a listener, feel like they're welcome to be a part of the discussion, where they're accepted and their presence and their input is valued. And that does a lot to, I think, ameliorate risks of one of the bigger problems people have managing life with new media, which is the formation of parasocial relationships.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know I'm not an expert. I don't know the textbook definition. But that's essentially, I believe, when an audience member or someone who consumes media that is produced and presented in a very personal fashion by an influencer, by a person, believes themselves to be far more like intimately familiar with the producer than they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of that disconnect, well, a lot of it comes from people who are just socially maladjusted, right? And they have a hard time with certain things, which is pitiable. But also there's a lot of content that feels like it's produced and presented by individuals in like this really personal and personable manner, right? Like, hey guys, I'm going to show you my life. We're going to be doing this, that, and the third thing. But they never stop to like talk with the people, their audience. And in their mind, right, like, oh, they're not meant to. They don't intend to.
They're like a superstar and they are the followers.
Not so much, just it's not always what people are comfortable with, right?
Mm.
But in your community, which has become our community, people are always welcome to engage with us, to talk with us. And so you're able to create like really positive relationships with people in your audience, with people in your Discord, with your friends, while maintaining like regular social boundaries.
Yeah.
Just by letting people in and letting them know that they're welcome here and we're glad that they're here. So you've done very, very well with that. I'm blown away by how dexterous all of you guys are with this new media stuff, to be honest, because I'm totally lost. But
I mean, I think that the main the main thing that I like to focus on, and I think that's the main thing that people that want to build a community should focus on, is the ability to listen and be empathetic even if they don't agree.
Yes. I mean, that's just civic life, really.
Yeah.
Like, that's how...
I mean, it's normal. You're not gonna agree with everyone about everything. And also, I think what is very important is that your opinion might not be the correct one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to people to understand that, like, yeah, maybe you've been brought up a certain way, or maybe you have a certain way of thinking, and that is completely fine, but that doesn't mean it's right.
And there's also
It
situations where multiple points of view are all just valid, right? Where there is
Yeah,
no objectively right, objectively wrong stance. And the most people can do when they disagree is say, you know, I respect where you're coming from. I appreciate you mean me no harm, and I hope you
yeah,
appreciate I mean you no harm regarding this topic, regarding this discussion, regarding life. I like you, you're my friend, but we're just not going to see one to one on this. That's
yeah, yeah,
really
exactly.
tough, and it demands, I think, a lot of emotional maturity in an age where
Hmm.
media is working and public ideology is working to encourage people specifically not to do that.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
think it's probably the most important skill for the formation of a really healthy community or a healthy civil society, to be able to
Yeah,
say, even if you don't look, sound, act, think, speak just like me, you have my best interest at heart. You want the best for me, and I want the best for you
yeah.
too.
It's just like the ability to understand that things are not really black and white, and things are not really right or wrong. Like, there are some shades in between,
Yes.
and that is basically, where we have to turn our empathetic part of the brain and be like, okay, let's try to understand this.
Empathy without sympathy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, like I say, just admire you and your community so much for that. Um, Let me see. You touched on your pandemic experience, so I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to delve too deep into that. But okay, this is actually something I am quite curious about. So, over the years, it's fair to say, right, you've gotten more involved in social justice and like public welfare efforts, right?
Yeah.
So, as you've become more aware of various issues that face not just communities, but things like regional issues, such as
Mm-hmm.
the potential calamity posed against wild dogs in certain parts of Eastern
Yeah.
Europe,
Yeah.
how, if at all, has your attitude towards or reception of the media, and particularly the games you consume, changed? Have you become more or less critical of the representation or presentation of certain things? Have you found yourself looking for certain things from developers more often? Has that had any impact on the way you consume and appreciate media?
Oh, it has definitely had a very big impact, mostly because I feel like that I have more understanding in a way, and like, it gave me like a different perspective to look at some things, especially when it comes to media in general. Like, yeah, I understand people are going for sensationalism,
Mm-hmm.
and are going to go for the news that sell the most, but you sometimes need to cover also things that are not so popular but people need to know. Also, in when it comes to modern media or like video games and things like that, I understand that having a big booby protagonist is going to sell your games, but is that really something that you need to put in your game?
Of course not.
Yeah. It's just like, people say that this, like, the entire woke culture is making people being ultra sensitive to things, and again, I say maybe, but the thing is that we as people should be aware of issues. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay not to react to every single thing, but at least you need to be aware, yes, these things exist. You
And
don't have to be insulted by every little thing that comes. You don't have to, like, for example, I came out as non-binary a couple of months ago,
mhm.
but I don't get upset at people saying she at me or something like that. It's just like, it's fine,
and
as long as you understand, it's completely
to make
okay.
sure I've not been making a massive faux pas the entire time, because I'm pretty sure we have discussed this before. Do you still prefer female pronouns?
I don't care either way. For me, it's completely fine, however you prefer, because I said the way that I feel, like, I feel as non-binary, but I don't want to inconvenience other people
it's no
because, of course,
whatever you want me to call you, I will. That's my policy.
yeah, like she, her is completely fine to use, because like it's not the way that I want to, people to adapt to me. It's just the way that I want to see myself.
I see.
Like it helped me, how I see myself. It helped me understand myself. It helped like put a label on how I feel. So that is very very much useful, but I don't need the entire ceremony that goes along with it. It's not for my benefit.
So for you, it's more of like an internal thing than an external.
Yeah.
Like this is how
Yeah,
I
exactly.
understand myself.
Yeah.
How others understand, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I
It's like,
get that.
also people that are like closeted, when they come out, they don't have to like shout it from the
Right.
top of their lungs. It's just like they don't really openly discuss it, but it's not like they're hiding it, right? It's just like something that's theirs.
And something I wanted to touch on, again, without like just overwriting this last part of the interview with my own commentary, you mentioned, and I think it's such an important discussion to have, like people object to, erroneously, totally
Yeah.
incorrectly, to increased social awareness of certain very important issues facing certain demographics, and therefore our communities as a whole, by saying, oh, people get too offended over this, over that, over the third thing. And the fact of the matter is, well, regarding so many social problems, especially those problems that target people based on their demography, right? Their gender identity, their sexual identity, their religion, their nationality, their ethnicity, and so on. At least in social spaces, until fairly recently, and we're talking like maybe the past generation, you weren't really able to and encouraged to have deep, nuanced discussions about these things, about these problems, in a venue that would be receptive, right? Where people would care about and listen to what you had to say, and that, yes, this is a real problem, that people are really being hurt every day. And so when you have this kind of discourse after people have been bottling things up and made to their whole lives, are there going to be some people maybe who overreact or are a bit militant? Yeah, sure, there are. But the reactions are still to very real problems that people need to address. And the overwhelming majority of people who speak out about these, like 99.9%, are people genuinely aggrieved who are just looking for appropriate redress from broader society. So the thing to do is engage in these conversations then and say, what can we do to make like our communities happier and healthier for all of us? Because giving something to somebody else does not necessarily mean taking away something you already have.
Yeah.
Never, really. Like Poli-Sci 101 is most public goods are not zero sum, meaning it's not about this group has it or that group has it. You can all benefit from public goods.
No,
Yeah.
mine only.
Yeah, I think also part of the reason why there is so much resistance towards the woke culture, especially from, let's say, older generations, is the fact that in the last couple of years, we kind of opened up the floodgates of information. So it kind of feels like, we are bombarding the entire world with like negative things like, oh, wars everywhere, oh, a global warming, oh, ecological catastrophe, oh, people's genders and identities, just like it feels like it's all coming at the same time.
Every bad thing in the world is dropped off at your doorstep every single day. That's how.
Yeah, exactly. Every single day, multiple times a day. And I understand it's very hard to go through all of that. It's very hard to be aware of everything. But I think that nobody can expect of you anything more than being aware and making a conscious decision to do better one day at a time.
Trying to be kind, really.
Yeah.
We'll probably get into this again in a couple of weeks, but my personal philosophy never has gotten any more complex than all people are people and should be treated as such, legally, socially, intellectually. So unless I am like personally romantically interested in someone, and I'm demisexual, that is not easy, I don't care who you are, where you're from, how you identify yourself. You are a person, and a person is a person is a person. I treat everyone and see everybody the same. I don't care. we've got a community of folks from all around the world who I love talking to just because they know what I mean when I say fume night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's maybe the kind of attitude that would be more like that more people would benefit from, right? Like, you can be just benevolent in your own community, and that's a great way to start.
Yeah.
And we could have like an entire episode about this, but I do
Oh,
think
of course. Yeah.
I think mass media and the news in particular, since it's driven by engagement, is biased towards negative tones in a way that turn a lot of people off from messages they may otherwise be receptive to. Not activists and activism themselves, but like you say, when everything is sandwiched between there's a famine here, natural disasters there, war over here, it's overwhelming for a lot of people.
Yeah,
but when you say,
definitely.
hey, did you know there's a really easy way you could improve the lives of thousands of people in your city right now without having to give a single cent? That's maybe a bit more attractive. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it's really simple, really. Like, I, for example, recycle. I very much mind what I'm buying. I make sure that I don't buy, for example, cosmetics that are not biodegradable or that,
Smart.
I don't know, poison the water or whatever. Quite a lot of people don't do that, and I'm fine with that. Like, not everyone can be aware. I'm not gonna go hunting people and like look in their bathrooms what they're using to shower themselves with. But it's like, if you can make an effort not to put a plastic bottle in a container that clearly says paper only, you're good in my book.
Yeah.
So
again, good faith public engagement, as long as
yeah,
you are trying to be kind.
yeah, and you're trying your best. Like, you don't have to recycle every day, but like, if once a week you find a newspaper and you put it in the container that says paper,
You've helped.
You're already trying.
Like, as long as I should say genuinely trying, not Big Ed trying to be kind.
No, but it doesn't even have to like require any like too big of a like engagement. Like, there's trash cans which have like 3 separate cans. And then you just throw it and just take a bag, put it in the appropriate can, take the other bag, put it in the other appropriate can, take the third one, put in the third one. You're like,
it's not
it's not like
rocket science.
Yeah, it's not also like you have to go, okay, this is a Coke bottle, so this goes into Coke bottle trash can. This is a beer bottle, this goes into beer bottle.
It's not like you have to retrieve each of those trash cans from different dungeons scattered around the world.
Yeah, literally, it's like 3 things. You do more complex stuff during the day without even thinking.
Like, oh, sweet, guys, we banished the Demogorgon. Now we can recycle cardboard.
Yeah, it's like basically handing over a lot of quests at a single quest giver instead of finding 10 different ones across the city.
But the point we're trying to drive home is it doesn't take much on an individual's part to be a beneficent force in their community. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And all really people have to do is make a good faith effort to be kind, I think.
Yeah.
And that will solve so many more of the world's problems, like broad-based social problems, than people would think.
Yeah.
You know what's also like a big problem, kind of like what puts people off of certain things? Like every single culture, community, whatever you want to call it, has their own like extremists,
Zealots.
people who are the loudest.
Yes.
So they just put out like the image of that being those people, like the Dark Souls community, like the woke culture community, where oh, this person said a mean thing 10 years ago, let's just cancel everyone.
I've not helped the Dark Souls problem at all, I would just like to say.
Well, that's a special toxic kind of. No, but like,
need I bring up the Reddit post again?
Like you shouldn't just dismiss it based on that. Like, just do a little bit of research. If it ends up being like, okay, all of these people are cunts, fuck them.
And like, look, since we're having this discussion now, I will say again, and I would actually like to do a full episode on this, because I ascribe so much of the negativity that I've seen present in people's ideologies and mindsets, like even before the pandemic, to like algorithmically fed news feeds. The internet and new media is driven by engagement, right? Oftentimes these platforms make their money based off of advertisement deals, based off of like third-party agreements and contracts. So
Yeah.
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those, they make their money simply based on users' presence on an activity within the platform. It doesn't matter what you're doing, how you're feeling, how long, well, maybe how long you engage, but like with whom you engage, any of that, as long as you're there, they're happy, you're making them money. Now, algorithmic researchers found really early on the best way to keep people engaged and therefore make more money over a protracted period of time was by curating a content feed for them based on things like previous searches, based on things like people they follow, all that jazz. But you know what else they also found drives people to be more engaged? Extremes, superlatives.
Yep.
So that's why you don't see a lot of videos on YouTube titled like, I don't know, very large burger challenge or massive burger challenge. It's always what? World's biggest burger challenge.
Yeah.
The largest I've ever eaten. The hardest challenge. It's all of these EST words, right? And so when people engage with one another through social media like new media platforms like the social networks, I think, Potato, that's where what you mentioned comes into play. They are going to be shown the most extreme face of ideologies, of groups, of movements they may not have all that much familiarity with, because whether or not they're overjoyed and can't wait to get involved, or they're infuriated and can't wait to write like a very poorly written, typo-laden 15-tweet screed against them, they're gonna be engaged because of that extreme. Now, does it matter that 95% of the people affiliated with the movement don't present themselves that way? No, and you're never going to see them because they're boring to the algorithm and therefore a loss of money.
Yep.
Also, it's not just that. Like, if you're like, if you're trying to do something for a cause, you're not gonna spend 12 hours of your day on forums and newspaper article comment sections just typing really extreme comments. You're actually gonna try and do something.
You're going to be fundraising, you're going to be making documentaries or something, you're going to be conducting interviews with local media outlets. Yeah, you're going to be doing something productive.
Useful. Yeah. Whereas those loud ones are just like, oh yeah, I'm the best at this. I'm the most virtuous vegan. I've never even seen a dead animal, and all they do is just type in the comments.
Like, to give you an idea, we've mentioned this in passing on the podcast before, but if I were to tell you guys, well, first off, you guys couldn't believe it when I told you I was from the South.
Yeah.
Secondly, do I match even remotely? I'm using myself as an example because that's what I know the best. Based on the internet, based on like what news feeds feed you, do I match the profile of like your image of an American Christian at all?
No.
Right. Because I'm sorry, but for lack of a better word, normal and well-adjusted and not a political extremist. Because my faith is boring. There is nothing flashy or ostentatious or anger and or fervor inspiring about it. It's just a really like niche part of who I am, of my identity, and I am just some guy you probably wouldn't watch unless he was cussing at his computer. So that, I think, goes to show how this kind of engagement-driven model is maybe making people more extreme and driving people further apart.
Yeah.
Because life through social media, through new media, is essentially being TLC'd. It's being driven towards the kind of over-the-top, sensationalistic conflicts that reality TV thrives on. Because it's good for business, right?
I mean, it's all the fault of these damn internet networks, whatever. Back in my day, we didn't... Sorry.
Back in my day, we had 1G and we were thankful for that.
And I walked like 6 kilometers through lava and hail to get to school every morning.
I went to school on Freeze Easy Peak from Banjo-Tooie.
God.
We had untextured polygons, and that was how we liked it. God damn it!
And every Wednesday you had to make sure that Mario doesn't jump on your head. And God damn it, I can't do.
And it was potato.
I mean, it's a good thing because I was losing like the thread of the joke.
We've gotten off track. I'm sorry, Tina. We may have to edit a lot of that out.
She might have to edit a lot of it out.
I have 2 last questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, firstly, what are your predictions and your hopes for the future of gaming and maybe entertainment more broadly? What do you really want to see? Where do you think we're going? What are we going to see in the next couple of years?
Well, what I think we're gonna see, and what I'm actually very thankful about, is that it seems that more and more companies are being held accountable for their shitty behaviors. So I think that we are going to see an improvement when it comes to the treatment of workers in the gaming industry, which also in return is gonna increase the quality of games, because let's be honest, a happy game developer is gonna make a better game than a very, very shitty paid and shitty treated game developer. But also I think that um, like open world games have been popular in the last couple of years, and I think that that trend is going to soon disappear. Because I think that we've been seeing a lot of burnout from open world games, and people are craving more simplistic design right now. So I think that we are gonna see more simple games when it comes to choices and the size of the game, but maybe more complex, that they are gonna have like hidden messages and deeper meaning. So something like Undertale, maybe, just
or like NSR, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Anything else?
No, like I think that, well, the big problem right now is still that the new gen consoles are not really that readily available. So I think for a while we're gonna be seeing a lot of re-releases and re-releases, etc. On the old gen consoles, and maybe on like PC, and then on Switch, and Skyrim and Witcher re-release 100 and stuff like that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's how it's gonna be for a while.
But that just means we get more time to play some really cool small indie games.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Like
yeah, when we don't have to jump. Yeah.
God damn it, Brady.
Damn it.
It's so much cooler than we are.
Yeah.
No, Brady. She is so much cooler than we are. Seph, I mean.
Yeah. Thank you. I know.
Joking. Don't worry about it.
And now my final question. And then I'll cede the floor to Demonte if he has anything he would like to ask. So, is there anything, not just from this interview, but maybe more broadly, because as we've said, you are a very experienced and accomplished individual in many fields, is there anything, any message, any lesson, or maybe just any resources that maybe are valuable to you that you would like to share with our audience? Anything you would like to offer them?
I think I would just like to share one message. It's very true in my field as it is in life in general, and that is imposter syndrome is a very real thing. You thinking that you're the worst and everyone around you is so much better is a thing that every single person has in their head, and even those people that you think are so much better think the same thing.
Yes.
So don't be stressed out if you feel like you're not where you wish to be right now, because everyone else is feeling exactly the same and thinking exactly the same. So we are all united in our feeling that we are not good enough.
And knowing or feeling like you aren't where you want to be is usually a sign of dedication to your field or to the people you work with or you live with, the people in your orbit. And you should take solace in the fact, because I know I have personal experience with this, in the fact that you care so much and you're working so hard to do well for them.
Yeah.
Admirable. That's beautiful. Tina, thank you so much. Um, I'm going to cede the floor now, Mate.
Well, I'd just like to expand a little bit on what Seph said. Like a happy developer will makes better games. A happy person will make be better at anything.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just if if you think you're not like doing well at something, like maybe try doing stuff as much as you can that will make you happy.
Yeah.
Even if it's just slacking off for an hour, maybe playing some little game that will just make you a little bit better, make you feel better. You never know,
Yeah.
or anything. Like I know, Seph, you got into a lot of hobbies lately, right?
Yeah, I've been doing crocheting. I have my own crochet store that where I do video game
There's gonna
characters.
be a link in the
Um,
description.
of course. I'm gonna make sure to put it there. I also draw a lot. I read a lot. So I play with my dog. So sometimes when I feel overwhelmed, and generally I have, let's say, a bad day at work, and I feel like nothing is going the way that I want it to go. Sometimes the thing that you need is just take a nap. Yeah, half an hour power nap in the middle of the day. Like, why not? When you wake up, you're gonna have a new perspective. Or maybe you just need to eat a good chocolate. Maybe you need ice cream. Maybe you need a 15-minute walk. Maybe you need
All of those at once.
yeah, all of those at once. Maybe you need to cuddle a dog. Maybe you need to have a short workout. Maybe you need to bend over and sniff a flower. That's where I was going with that sentence. But just like do something that makes you happy for a little while, and you're gonna be able to approach all of your problems with a fresh mind, with more positive energy. And one thing that I've learned throughout all these years is, yeah, we generally tend to be very cynical as people, very cynical, sarcastic, and I was like that my entire life. But when I tried to focus my thoughts in a much more positive way and just approach things from a more positive perspective, I realized things were much easier to do. And everything started going the way that I wanted to go. It just took a difference in perspective.
It's very much a case, I think, and I say this as someone who has struggled with negative thoughts and self-image my whole life. It's very much a case of, silly as it sounds, if you go looking for something hard enough, you will find it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
so I think that's why, speaking as a convert to optimism, um, optimists and cynics always kind of, at first glance, look or sound kind of ridiculous to the other camp
Hmm.
because they're not accustomed to looking for or maybe seeing the positives or the negatives, or seeing
Yeah,
them so potently. But you're right, the
yeah.
power
I
of
mean, for
positive thinking
example,
isn't limitless like some terrible self-help books suggest, but it can
yeah,
make a very clear difference.
yeah. I think the main difference is just you will not fall into that self-fulfilling prophecy situation. For example, if you keep being worried that you're gonna get fired from your job, like you're gonna be so worried that you're gonna be like radiating negative energy. You won't be able to focus on your work. You're gonna genuinely start doing a bad job, and then yes, you are gonna get fired. So the same thing, like for example, if you're worried that your partner is gonna dump you, like if you constantly worry about it, you're gonna be moody, you're gonna be in a very negative mind
You're
space,
gonna take it out
and
on
then
Yeah.
them.
yeah, you're gonna start taking it out on them, and then yes, they are gonna break up with you. So
Uh,
And that's hard sometimes, right? When you're struggling with a negative self image, especially regarding certain things, because at least this is my experience. And talking to people, I know I'm not the only one. Um, you suspect that you're not doing good enough at this, or
hmm,
such and such. This person doesn't like you or respect you or whatever.
yeah,
But you don't know, and that lack of confirmation makes it more uncomfortable. So you're
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
trying to figure out okay, I know this is bad, right? I know this is bad, and you don't see the signs until you act so disruptive you start to get them.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
is fundamentally what you just said.
yeah.
uh,
Um hmm?
but also, like, I was gonna ask Seth, like, since you recently got into a lot more like
Hmm.
time-consuming stuff, even though it is technically your free time,
Yeah,
it's not time where you're just watching a TV show or doing nothing. So do you
Yeah.
feel like you kind of have a better, let's say, self-image, or you feel better about yourself when you don't have time to think about any of that, when you're just doing stuff, whatever it may
Oh,
be?
definitely. Yeah, so the thing is that I, as anyone else, had a lot of problem with negative self-image, and also the fact that I'm like wasting time playing video games or
Hmm.
something like that. Um so for the longest time I was trying to fill my free time with as much activity that would not let my brain go into any sort of negative thought process, and the methodology that I implemented was fake it till you make it. So I was forcing myself into situations where I was not able to think a lot about negative things, and then after a while it just became a force of habit. I genuinely stopped thinking in a negative way, even when I'm able to have some free time where I'm not like super productive or super busy with something.
Yeah, but still having too much free time is still ends up being a bad thing. Like
Oh,
I can say
definitely.
from experience, I've had several like self isolations of 2 weeks, and just having the
Hmm.
Rona for two
Hmm.
weeks. And okay, the Rona kind of fucked me up, so I didn't really have time to
Yeah.
just feel bad, other than just not feel well, uh, physically.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when I was in fucking isolation for 2 weeks, and that was like around New Year's,
Yeah.
Mm.
and that's like, I live with other people, so I don't want to infect them. So you're
Yeah.
staying in your room, and you're just in your room 24/7 for 2 weeks. It just kind of makes you just,
Yeah.
It gets to you.
even if you're I think even if you're the most optimistic person and happy in the world, it'll make you kind of depressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does get to you. Like, I am generally considering myself to be an introvert. I don't like being around people, but even for me, like an isolation of that regard, like of that amount, would be very, very mind breaking.
Yeah, like even if you're like 100% introverted, where like I did, those personality tests, which go like,
Yeah,
oh, you're 100% introvert. I don't like being alone all the time.
Of course,
yeah,
nobody
Like,
does. We're social
my
creatures.
thoughts are scary. I don't want to be alone
yeah.
with myself. I don't trust
The
myself.
voices are very scary. They tell me
You,
weird
you
shit.
also
Doing
hear the voice?
tons.
Yeah. Aren't you the voice in my head?
No, I'm the voice outside your head.
Ah, okay.
That was
But
actually no. Those were great questions. Like how you manage free time, because I think those
yeah,
are one
yeah,
of
and
the
I
biggest
just thought of
challenges.
them by
It's one of the
myself.
biggest
On
challenges
the
that's plagued
spot.
all three of us, right? Like, what do you do when you're told, okay, your entire life is free time now, but not really.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Seph,
when
I
you
think
finish college and you're like, okay, you're free, go. And you're like, but what do I do?
me, I just
It's
ran
scary.
right back inside. Um,
Yeah, you're like, nope. It
but
smells out here. I'm going back.
I think I think Tina, you handled the stress of the pandemic far better than most people I know, because you created so many positive outlets for yourself and are such a determined, hardworking person. Like, you were able to handle this with incredible aplomb, and I can't applaud you for that enough.
I mean, I had also like those moments as everyone else had during the pandemic when I was like really down and like
Sure.
thinking about the meaning of life and what is the point of living in such a horrible world of, Panasonic and everything. For anyone that doesn't know, like YouTube has a problem with the word that starts on P, so it's Panasonic now.
I was about to say
Uh,
there's one sponsorship we ain't never getting.
yeah, Panasonic, Panorama, however you want to call it. But yeah, the thing is that I tend to, for some reason, like process things a little bit faster than other people. Like according to my doctor, it could be ADHD. I'm currently getting tested for that. But like some people tend to, go through those depressive periods. Like for example, during the Panorama that lasted for months and months, and I got through that in like very intense 2 weeks, and then I managed to like pull myself back up and then get overproductive. So I just think that I had that lucky, well, lucky, like a different approach to it, just a different way that my brain was
You
working.
were singularly well suited to manage it with relative ease.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're so glad that you could, because you have been a cornerstone of our community and our lives now for years. We're so happy to have you.
Yay!
You have anything else to add, Mate?
No.
Tina, anything you would like to leave the people with before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm really sorry that we had now 1.5 hour of us talking about me.
No.
Next week we're gonna be talking about someone else, I promise.
No, this is one of my favorite episodes we've done. I love the casual interview format.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I think we should expand it, like, not throughout just the three of us, but like
Yes.
members of our community in general.
Yes, of course.
I was actually thinking the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we could call this Between Three Streamers, but
That.
yeah, it sounds different than like just a pun on the Zach Galifianakis show.
Oh God.
He did Between Two Ferns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's him. That was good. That was a really good
We're gonna
one.
need to think of a better name because we're better, obviously.
Yes.
Just over interviewing people.
Oh God. Meet the Overanalysts family.
Oversharing.
Oversharing. Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's what we should call it. Oversharing.
Yeah. I agree. That sounds the best.
Well, in that case, thank you so much, Martina, for being our first willing guinea pig here on Oversharing with the Overanalysts.
Yay, first episode of Oversharing.
I think everything you've shared today is going to be really enjoyable for the audience, really informative, and a lot of the positivity you put out there, I hope, is really going to resonate, because God knows we need more of it now. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for putting up with me derailing things as I always do. Just thank you for everything. It's been a wonderful show.
Yay! My pleasure.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude today's episode. However, we have several opportunities for you to engage with this program and us in greater depth. First of all, since this is a new season of the show and a totally new format, we've never done this Oversharing interview program, please let us know in the comments down below if you have any, or if you're on YouTube, of course, if you have any questions, possibly for Martina, that you would like her to answer at the start of our next episode, anything you would like to know. And let us know if you have any feedback just concerning the show, the format, the second season so far. And of course, if you are not on YouTube or would wish to send us a more detailed message, you can do so either in our Discord, which will probably be linked below, or you can send us an email at the Overanalysts podcast, all one word, all lowercase, at gmail.com.
It's also going to be linked.
Mm-hmm. Until next time, thank you so much for your time and your patronage today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. And again, big thanks to Martina for agreeing to share with us today. Until next time, I'm Brady, or the Overanalyst, joined as always by my good friends Martina, or Seph the Overwitch.
Good night, everyone.
And Mate, or Comrade Potato.
Good night, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button.
Wishing you well and a wonderful week ahead. We'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.